God is giving us a sign. It's like, I set before you life or death. America is on one hand is racing away from God on the verge of judgment. But on the other hand, God is saying, listen, I can bring revival. All it takes is one person out there, one Josiah, man or woman, one Josiah generation that can literally alter the course of a nation that is falling away from God, which is America right now. Without revival, America is finished. It's either life or death. This is life or death, everybody. We have to pray for revival as never before. What if God was giving us a message? What if he was sending a revelation about where we are right now, what is coming, what lies ahead, what we need to know to deal with what's coming, what his people, an answer, a blueprint, a guide, how to stand, how to prevail, how to survive in what is happening. That's the first part. Secondly, what if behind all the events that have been taking place in America and the world, what if there was an ancient mystery that actually, an ancient calendar that actually appointed these events, actually gives the timing of the events that have happened in our lives down to the year, the month, in some cases, the minute and the second of when it happened. That is what the Josiah Manifesto is going to reveal.
In the return, you mentioned the Valley of Hinnom a minute ago, Jonathan. In your last book, The Return of the Gods, which we also discussed here on TBN, you talked about what went down there at the Valley of Hinnom in ancient Israel when, by the way, Josiah was king. He put an end to it.
That's right.
But that was the world of his time. Tell us a bit more, just so people know, in the modern parallels of what went on in ancient Israel.
Well, when they turned away from God, they turned to other gods. They turned to Baal and Moloch, and they offered up their children. So now we have America that has known God, turned away from God like clockwork. We start offering up our children, 60 million of them. And America actually spread it across the world. America was actually key in this. Now, the thing is, if you remember, during that's when the plague first came. But the day that it all fell on America, it was in March. In the middle of March, everything locked down. We were quarantined. Trump went on the air. The stock market crashed. It was called the day that changed everything. The media said this is the day that changed everything. It was March 11th, 2020. Everything, we were all locked in after that. Well, what happens if you go back 50 years to the Jubilee? It goes to March 11th, 1970. Anything happen? March 11th, 1970 is the day that abortion on demand actually began on American soil. And so 50 years later, to the exact day again, it comes down upon us. Now, you mentioned Valley of Hinnom. That's where they're offering up their children. And one of the things that Jeremiah says is the plague and the death is going to return to the same ground where you offered up the children. And so the thing is, so what is America's Valley of Hinnom? It's New York. Not only did it begin on the continent in New York is the capital of abortion in America. More children have been killed where we are than any other place. So notice what happens. The plague comes to America. Then where does it go to? Focuses on this little tiny sliver of New York. And the thing is, 1 out of every 2 cases at one point were New York in America. 1 out of every 2. So the thing is that now there's a whole parallel, but let me just say this. Got to a point where it crossed a milestone where there were more cases of this plague, COVID, in New York than any other nation.
Just in this one city.
The state, but most of that's the city, more than China. Now, the date that it crossed the milestone was April 10th, 2020. Okay, what happened? Go back April 20th, go back 50 years, you go to April 10th, 1970. Anything happen? That's the day New York legalized abortion, on the exact day again.
The patterns of the Lord. And it just shows you, throughout the book, I'm just reading it, Jonathan, thinking, the children are near and dear to God's heart, to the Father's heart.
Oh, yeah. You don't touch the children.
There's going to be a lot of millstones out there, I think, in the days to come. Folks, again, the book is called The Josiah Manifesto, just an ancient mystery, a guide for the end times. You write that the events that are shaking America, including what you call the plague, the COVID-19 pandemic, actually adhere to an ancient calendar.
Yeah.
Tell us more about
and let me and even throw in that when Roe versus Wade was overturned, it all went back to Leviticus, because Leviticus says you'll count 7 by 7, 49 years, and then comes the 50th year. Now, the 50th year is not when you turn 50. It's when you finish turning 49, and then that begins your 50th year. And then you complete it when you turn 50. It's over. The Jubilee is that. Well, the Jubilee of Roe versus Wade was January 22nd, 2022 to January 22nd, 2023. And it was right in the middle of the Jubilee year of Roe versus Wade that Roe versus Wade was overturned in the Levitical year of Jubilee. So even that. Now, there is this thing, Eric, that you kind of asked before and we kind of accidentally teased it. And that is that there's an ancient calendar from God of the holy days. In Leviticus 23, he gives the holy days of Israel. Now, the amazing thing is when all these shakings are coming to America, all these things were ordained in that ancient calendar of holy days. Let me give you an example. The first holy day of Israel is Passover. That's in the spring. What is Passover about? It's the only holy day that's about a plague. It's about a plague. And the thing is that when does it come? In the spring. In the spring of 2020, when all this was happening, we were all locked down, okay? Jewish people were in their houses recounting the ancient account of when a plague went through the land on Passover, and it was Passover, and a plague was passing through the land, okay, and through the world. The lockdown, and the lockdown was at its height. But the thing is, Passover is also the first national lockdown in recorded history. God said, go into your house until the plague passes. So it's all like it's manifesting. And so we're literally locked down on the Feast of Lockdown and Plague. And in Israel, they were told on that day, you have to go in your house and you're quarantined until morning, which is the first time since Moses, So I'll just give you a taste of it. Then what happens if you go to the next one? The next great feast is Shavuot or Pentecost. What is Pentecost? It's the fire of God coming, the holy fire, the tongues of fire, the baptism of fire coming on the people. Now the thing is, the amazing thing is when you start now moving to the late spring, early summer, the next shaking comes to America. We are baptized in an unholy fire. All of a sudden, all across America, fires break out. It is the greatest civil disturbance in the history of our nation. All over, the cities are on fire, protest and
summer
fire.
2020.
The summer of rage. And you know what, Eric? The day that Jewish people are lighting the candles for Shavuot, Pentecost,
yeah.
But it was May 28th. That is the day it all broke out across America. That was the key day. Let me go further. Okay, there's so much to it, but I'm just going. The next great day is the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, now the Feast of Trumpets for the Jewish reckoning is the day when God, according to the reckoning, is a day of judgment called Yom Hadin, where you got to get right with God, because because they say on that day, God in the high court of heaven, he passes his sentence. The judge passes his sentence. So here it's about the high court. So what happens at that time? The eyes of America are all turned to the high court of America. And it's turned to the high court. It also says on that day, it says God determines who will pass from the earth. On that day, Judge Ginsburg, highest court judge, passes from the earth.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg
passes from the earth on the Feast of Trumpets. In fact, it's announced, trumpets begins at sundown. It's right after sundown, the announcement comes across America. That act, now let me say something else. On that day of trumpets is Jewish people also pray, that's the other day they pray, Lord, remove the evil of the decree. Remove the evil of the decree. That is the day, because of what happened, that opened the door to remove the evil of the decree of Roe versus Wade, because of what happened on the Feast of Trumpets. And the Feast of Trumpets begins repentance, turning. And it was that event that allowed for the repentance of America.
Tell us more about the Day of Turning. It really, you could say, and say in the book, it changed the course of American history.
Yes. Now this is the next holy day, which I witnessed. I mean, this is one of those things and that is that first of all, we felt during all this, we had to have a national gathering, a national day of prayer and repentance, and have it on the National Mall, also across the country. It was called the Return. And so we had it. This is in September of that year, right? And I didn't realize until I'm looking at the calendar and I realized the day that was chosen for the day of the Return is actually a day in the Hebrew calendar called Shabbat Shuvah, which means the day of the return. So the day of the return was called on the day of the return.
And the event's the return.
And it's the return. And it's a day of turning when the nation is to come before God and they read Joel, like have a holy gathering of Savior. That's exactly what we were doing on the National Mall. We're repenting, And I was led to take that jar of Jeremiah and smash it there, which is about the children. We're praying about the children, praying about abortion. Well, at the same time, Trump, the Jehu, President Trump, he has to nominate another judge who's going to overturn abortion. And he chooses as the same day of the return. The Hebrew day of turning and repentance. It's appointed to turn a nation. That day began the overturning of abortion by his nominating that vote. That was the turning. So the turning of America began on the day that God appointed as the day of turning. And it's going to go even farther, because here's the thing, Eric. At the end of the prayers, I was led that at about 5 o'clock, let's seal it all with the sounding of the trumpets, sounding of the shofar. So I called up all these men, and they're up there, and say now we seal all this, And this trumpet is the sound of God's power. It's the sound of Jericho. It's the sound of And I said we seal all these prayers, and I believe it's also 50 years of prayers. We seal it now with the sound, and let the power of God go forth. And then I said, go. Okay, let's see. At the same moment, at the White House, that's when Trump opens his mouth and begins the overturning of abortion. Same moment. In fact, when we looked at the videos, when the trumpet sounded, it was 5 o'clock, 4 minutes, and 33 seconds. When Trump opened his mouth, it was 5 o'clock, 4 minutes, and 33 seconds. The exact same second. The beginning of the overturning of Roe versus Wade was to the sound of the trumpets, the sound of God's power, the sound exactly. And so everything had to be in its place to the exact second. I had no idea. I don't claim to have any idea of it, but God does. And God was putting his hand, that he literally was overturning, changing the course of a nation. It was his hand, the sign of his power. And I'll throw this in. This is just between us. Yeah. Well, we're
and
on,
a few million other people.
We're on the stage, and there's 6 trumpets. I wanted there to be 7, but I just said, whoever's got a trumpet, come up, And so I wanted to say, well, the 6th trumpet sounded. But at the same moment, when I said the trumpet sounds, the trump sounded. He was the 7th trump. His name in English means the trump. And it was the year of Jubilee of abortion. So the trump sounded, and it set in motion the redemption. Was that, and not saying he knew what he was doing or he was planning it, but God is sovereign. God is over kings. God is over. The trump sounded.
Now, we've still got a lot of problems in this nation, obviously, which we will talk about and the way forward. But you call this an overturning. Yes, Roe v. Wade overturned, a turning point for our nation in a positive way.
Yes.
Obviously, we've got a lot of problems still that also need overturning.
Absolutely.
Quick question. This is kind of a theme throughout the book.
Yeah.
The year 2020. I mean, a watershed year for all of our lives, really. What happened in that year in the spiritual realm? It just seems like, and you outline in the book, so many things from COVID, the riots, to Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing, everything else, the Jubilee of abortion.
Everything. Yeah.
2020 just seemed like we almost crossed a prophetic threshold in a sense in that year. We're on the other side right now, but things are still tumultuous, no doubt.
Yeah, well, we did. We did. And that was the beginning of the Jubilee of abortion's entrance. And then it would be a 3-year period, just like there was a 3-year period with Roe versus Wade. It would be a 3-year period with the overturning of that as well. So the thing is, we are at a crosshold. We are at a threshold right now, and a crosshold. And this was a major, gigantic event. And I think we can move right to it. And that is that, what is the significance of all these things? Because this is ultimately what this sign is. What you see, the greatest altar when I say great, I mean colossal. I don't mean good. Is of altar we have in America was that of Roe versus Wade, abortion. Yeah. We killed 60 million children on it. Well, this was the cracking of the altar. This was the breaking of the altar by the hand of God. We know we're not even near over or anything, but this was a sign from God, and we're going to see in this that this is so significant. This altar is such a gigantic thing. There's a message from God in it, which is to every one of us.
What is the sign of the broken altar? You talk about this in the book.
Yeah.
And what does it say about America's future?
Yeah. The broken altar is one of the most powerful biblical signs. I mean, literally, in the Bible, it appears again and again and again. It happens when there's a change, or there's a potential change. Happens when there's a civilizational change. When the Israelites came into the land, they broke the altars of the land. When they sinned, they built the altars of the gods. When they turned back to God, they broke the altars. So this is ultimately going to link to the guy we know, who's Josiah, which is going to be very specific. But the thing is that, so the sign of the broken altar, it's a few things. Number one, it's a sign, it's a warning, because the fact that you have an altar means it's a nation that once knew God that has turned away from God. That is America. That was Israel. That is America. But the fact that the altar was broken is a sign from God. That was the ancient sign of the potential of revival. Back then, they didn't have gospel tent meetings. I mean, they had tent meetings, but we don't know that. And they were great, but that's not what the sign of revival was the breaking of the altar. God is giving us a sign. It's like, I set before you life or death. America is on one hand is racing away from God, on the verge of judgment. That's one of the things I've said is all the signs are coming. So on one hand, it's a late stage. But on the other hand, God is saying, listen, I can bring revival. It was the hand of God that broke this altar. I mean, we've shared so many things. And one of the things was that the moment that this was set in motion was to the sound of the trumpets. I mean, this is the power of God. God did it, And so God is saying there can be revival. It's either, and the thing is, it's one or the other. It's life or death. Because without revival, America is finished. It's either life or death. This is life or death, everybody. We have to pray for revival as never before. Yes. Because this is literally, this is the broken altar moment.
Amen. Folks, it is revival or bust. I don't think there's really any in between. Which brings us to Josiah.
Yes.
The namesake of the book, the Josiah Manifesto, one of my heroes in the Bible, no doubt. Tell us about Josiah and how all of this is connected to this ancient biblical king.
Yeah, all these mysteries we've just touched on are really converging to this one answer and to the broken altar, but the broken altar is speaking of Josiah. There's nobody in the Bible who is more connected to the broken altar than Josiah. His birth was prophesied centuries before he was born, with God breaking the altar at Bethel. I mean, think about that, And this would be the guy who's known for breaking more altars, because he actually went down to the Valley of Hinnom and ended those altars where they were killing the babies. So this is totally Josiah, and so literally. This is the man who was born in a time of great apostasy. First of all, the day of Josiah, the days are the days we're in right now, because it was a nation that had known God, but now was offering up its children, now also was worshiping the gods of the nations, was actually, and that's the return of the gods, but they were into sexual immorality. They were into the confusing of gender, Ishtar, if you remember. They were actually, and by the way, Josiah dealt with that altar too. He dealt with the altar of gender confusion. He dealt with the altar of the child sacrifice. He dealt with the altar of sexual immorality. All these things we're dealing with, he dealt with. Now, he was born to the father was an apostate. He was an evil man. His grandfather was an even greater evil man, and who persecuted believers. Okay, so he's born in now. There's not much hope for him. Like if you look at the natural, this guy is not going to have a good life. He ends up turning his heart to the Lord despite his age, despite the culture.
Became king at the age of 8.
Yes,
and this is all laid out, folks, in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. But he was 8 years old and still very young when he began breaking the altars. A teenager.
As a teenager. And the thing is, they found the word of God. They were repairing the temple. He wanted the temple of God returned, and they found the word of God, and that just shook him. He repented. He said, "Oh my God, we're going to be judged. We're going to be." So he set up on a campaign of revival. And the campaign of revival is he went to Jerusalem because it was even, the altars were even there in Jerusalem, which would translate to even in the churches today. You have apostasy, you have dilution of the word, you have all these things. You wonder why things are going the way they're going. But he turned it around. This one man sold out for God. He literally, it says his heart was totally for God like nobody, and what it's saying is one man. Now here's the other thing about this Josiah moment, because we are in the Josiah moment right now. And the thing is, what it's saying is, Josiah came at the end. It was in the time of judgment. It was going to be judged. The kingdom was going to be destroyed. Okay. But Josiah, one man, delayed the whole thing. One man turned history around for that generation.
One righteous man.
One man who was sold out for God, when it looked like it was hopeless, like for many believers, it looks like it's hopeless. What I'm saying, it's not hopeless. That's what the Josiah Manifesto is about. And that is that that God is never finished. And all it took is one man to change the history of his generation. All it takes is one person out there, one Josiah, man or woman, one Josiah generation that can literally alter the course of a nation that is falling away from God, which is America right now. And
it doesn't necessarily have to be just one person.
No,
it could be many Josiahs. Essentially, we are all Josiah if we want to turn this thing around.
Yeah. So on one hand, we have a warning that the time is late. There is a judgment there. America's on the brink of it. On the other hand, God is not finished, and that God is never finished. And so one thing. So this is what opens up the manifesto part, and this is the kind of the last 100 pages, which is what do we do now? All according to what God put in there. What do we do? How do we deal? Everything from dealing with your children. What do you do with your children in school? What do you deal with? How do you deal with what's happening in the culture? How do you deal with entertainment? What's coming into your house? How do you deal with everything? And the thing is that God is never finished. Josiah was the breaker of altars. So we are called to break the altars of our culture, the altars of darkness. Not people, the altars of darkness. And so not only that, in our lives too, because Josiah first had to take the altars out of the palace area before he could do it. If you have an altar in your life, if you're dealing with some sin, something that is sexual immorality, whatever it is, deal with it first. Get that out of your life, and God is going to use you. It says the eyes of the Lord are searching the entire earth, looking for the one whose heart is his. Right. The good news here, and by the way, you know me, Eric, and every book I have, though we deal with some heavy things, there's always hope, but no book has so much hope. The way. Now, let me say something too. The manifesto, I call it because this is a godly manifesto, and that is that no matter what happens to America, first of all, if we're going to make a difference, it's going to happen by what we do. There's a plan of God, how to turn the culture. But at the same time, regardless, let's say that there's persecution. There's still a job for us to do. How do we deal with persecution? One of the sections of the manifesto is called the agents of heaven on earth. We are called to be agents of heaven on earth. We are agents, active. We are not to be passive. We're not to be reactive. We're to be radical. Josiah was radical. He was revolutionary. The days of being status quo are over for the church. We have to get radical. You know what's happening? It's kind of like the book of Acts. Remember the book of Acts? Yep. That book of Acts wasn't in a Christian culture. It was an anti-Christian pagan culture. So listen, you guys who've been praying, I wish I could live in Bible times. Congratulations. You're here. These are Bible times. And the thing is, Josiah was that light in the night that lit up the night. He didn't care what people said. He didn't care about the majority. He went against the flow, and God is calling us to be the same. It's time to get brighter. If the dark is getting darker, time to get brighter. One of the things that also, and I know this is one host, by the way, who always reads the book. He didn't have time to read the full book. So the thing is, at the very end, it's going to actually return to a mystery in the island where it began in Cuba that happened at night. That's the last mystery that's for the end times and the glory of God. And so this could be our greatest hour.